Hey, this is a podcast. It's My Good Bad Brain, and I'm going to do this little thing that I've heard on other podcasts that's kind of nice. I think where they read a review of the podcast someone else left. Because I don't know, it's just nice. It's if you what I'm trying to say is if you want to support the podcast, go to patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain if you get something out of it. And if you don't have money to throw at it, just leave a review because these reviews are really nice. This one was from Jamie is a Crybaby, which is a really funny name. They give me a 5-star review. Hell yeah, thank you. And they said MGBB so important. Can't express enough how important this podcast is. I don't have enough fingers to count how many times Jarrett has made me feel comfort in times when nobody else is around to understand or listen. I wish every episode that I could have a friend like him to talk to a million times. Thank you. And I don't know, that feels weird. I'm not good at self-promotion, but kind of the point of this episode is going to be around that it is reviews and people like that have made me want to keep doing this because I think whatever this podcast has been for that person, people out there have been for me, and both people who write reviews like that and in my real life, just feeling that validation and that place to hang out and be okay with whatever fucked up thing your brain is doing to you. So thank you for that review. If you like the podcast, if you get something out of it, please leave us a review or throw a couple bucks at it at patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. Plenty of preamble, all done. On with the show. Thank you. Welcome to my good bad brain. I'm a normal person, so I'm insane. I've got depression and ADHD, but I'm doing better since I medicated me. I'm still not always sure whether I exist or what being a person even really is, but I figured out a long time ago that being alive is beautiful. Hi, everyone. This is exciting. This is the 50th episode of My Good Bad Brain, which is wild. 50. Damn. That's it. That's almost a year. I guess we'll be at, well, soon it'll be more, 50. I did not plan this to be on the 50th episode, but I'm really happy it worked out that way. It makes it feel rather cosmic, I guess, this little aspect of whatever. But this is the first of, I guess maybe I'm calling it our good bad brain. I've been, this pod goes through a lot of forms, I guess. Finds itself, it's an organic thing, it defines its own vision, blah blah blah, I don't know, but always around that idea of self-expression and validation about ideas of mental health, attempts at being better, existential crises, being a person, just all of that weirdness of like what this is. And especially in the realm of mental health and diagnoses and medications and whatnot. And the best part of it has been you guys, has been messages I get from y'all, or just the little mini invisible network when I get to hear from people that feel connected to my brain and each other's, and that there's some resonant, validating experience here about what we all go through, trying to be better versions of ourselves, or just trying to be ourselves, or just trying to be, And so when this idea popped up a little bit ago to basically try to talk to some of y'all, see if some of you wanted to share your stories on My Good Bad Brain, I got excited about it, and one thing led to another, and this is the first one. Our first guest, one of you, is Lyndsay Cromwell, and Lyndsay, I just kind of went chronologically. I don't think I missed the other ones, but I have a little mini pile of emails in the My Good Bad Brain. If you hear this and think you'd like to be added to the list, mygoodbadbrain@gmail.com. Um, I just went with the first one. I don't think it'll always be chronological or anything like that, but I picked her being first, and I read hers because it was first, and it was just so human. It was like any of us, you know. She's had some tough things go on in her life, sort of recently, um, in the last few years. You know, she's in her 20s and she's in the Netherlands right now. And I don't want to go into too much about her backstory because we talk about all of it. It's just like any other Good Bad Brain episode, but instead of being with somebody who I know very personally or someone who's in the semi-public eye of the internet or something like that, this is just a listener, someone who's self-selected, which I think is so rad. Like there's some bravery in that, I think, to be willing to share. And there's a lot of like honor in that, I think. There's a lot of generosity of spirit to come and talk openly. And I guess there's a quality. I mean, you know, I've been to 12-step meetings before, and it just helps these venues where we can go up and speak and be heard. And also, I don't know, I hope it matters to her and to other people out there that when I hear other people speak, it makes a big difference to me too. So I think that's a huge part of it. And I'm just super pumped that we finally got it together and that this, our 50th episode, will start this new thing of talking to some of you listeners as we move forward. I'm really excited to continue that. I'll probably still talk to random people that I know or asked to be on the show. I'll keep doing brain breathers where I'm alone. I think I'm actually going to do one today also. Because last week's was a weird one, and I want to talk about that, so I'm not going to get too into that, but about the mood swinging kind of that I've been going through and that feeling like a ghost thing and just the weirdness of all of it. But yeah, I'm not gonna talk too much in front of this. We just have a nice long normal talk. In advance, I'll say there's some stuff about just death, dealing with deaths in the family. Um, her grandmother and her mother they passed away, and there's just a lot going on in her family. She's kind of an amazing person. She's like I don't know. I'm gonna let her speak for herself. You'll learn as I learned. I was also psyched that she wanted to talk about basically, you know, she's been on depression for medication for depression, anxiety rather, and she wanted to say specifically, she said in her email that as a black woman that there's like a lack of conversation around mental health in the African American community. And so I think that was cool too, to like just highlight that aspect of it and get into that a little bit. And I hope you enjoy our conversation. I really did. I kind of feel like this might be the thing my good bad brain always wanted to be. And I look forward to doing many more of these. And I hope that these kick ass, you know? I think that they'll be, I don't know, really, really rad things. Lyndsay, thank you for doing this. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you all enjoy listening to us speak and you find something that resonates and helps you. And you just, yeah, she's got this really interesting story and how she's coping with it. And man, when she talks about how she ended up in the Netherlands, that is a go get 'em strategy for trying to fix your own experience of your own brain. It's pretty rad. All right. So without further ado, thank you very much for joining me and then Lyndsay Cromwell, the wonderful Lyndsay Cromwell, as we discuss our good bad brain. Hello, is this the right? Yeah. And then we'll both clap on.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One. All right. Great.
Cool.
Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for doing this.
Nice to meet you.
So yeah, I guess we could, if we start as if I knew absolutely nothing about you, would you introduce yourself and tell me how you found my good bad brain and why you wanted to do this?
Sure. So my name is Lyndsay Cromwell. I found out about Good Bad Brain just by asking for podcast suggestions in my friend group, and it was suggested. And yeah, I've had an interesting couple of years or a year and a half, and I just have been working through it and talking to a lot of people about it. And the more I talk about it, the better it's becoming to manage. And I
Yeah.
think this is a really good opportunity to talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, that rules. That makes it I'm psyched to hear that somebody's out there recommending My Good Bad Brain too. That's nice. um well, yeah, I think that's absolutely right. From my experience, just talking to people, and that's the whole, I guess, reason to keep doing this thing. Um where are you now? You said because you're overseas. So how did that end up happening?
Yeah, so I'm in the Netherlands actually.
Yeah.
Um I've always wanted to travel.
Hmm.
And I ended up moving to help out with family, and that kind of put a pin in that idea.
Yeah.
So when everything happened, when I lost everyone in the way it happened, it was almost just like the opportunity just was like, well, what do you do now? Like you literally can
Yeah.
do whatever you want. And for me, that answer was shave your head and move across the world. So I did that.
I mean, that's very like Kung Fu the Legend Continues, you know? Like go
I
traveling,
mean,
become a monk. That's awesome.
just
Well,
do what you got to
yeah,
do.
yeah, you said in that first thing you go I had an interesting couple of years. And even that struck me. I was like, it's funny that we do naturally say I've been having an interesting time. Like that's the polite way to say like things have been hard.
Things
But
have
there's
just
something
been a
kind of
shit show.
yeah, yeah. It's like it's sort of I don't know, it's an interesting like polite reframing that's actually not that bad when you're like, "Well, yeah, yeah, it's kind of nice to say like it's interesting." Uh and in a lot of ways like I don't know, that even that like little accidental language trick kind of is like a nice way to be like things are fucking horrible. Or just be like, "Well, they're interesting," you know?
They're
Also like
interesting. I've had to
they're
do some
yeah.
thinking.
Well, tell me about that if you don't mind. Let's just jump into it. I mean, this is also, I'll just say again, I said this before when we were talking and recording it, but I'm super pumped. I think this is actually the 50th episode, which is kind of a neat coincidence. I didn't realize that's like a nice milestone, 50, and we're gonna start this new experiment. Which I think is like, yeah, I'm super grateful that you were, I think, first on the list of like I just went in chronological and I of who like reached out first. And yeah, I don't know, I just thought I'd say that, just to honor this little moment of like I'm excited to try this new thing with
Yeah.
people I really don't know. Because my good bad brain has been a lot of times with people I do know, and I think this is like there's something we share by all like going through it together.
Hmm.
And I really think that, and I really have, I don't know, I'm excited to sort of prove out that theory maybe, because when I talk to people that I know personally already, or I, some reason I'm like, hey, you want to come be on my thing, maybe it'll be an interesting talk. That's fine and cool, but like this is like we've never talked. We've had like a couple emails. You give me a little bit of your backstory, but
Right.
honestly, I didn't try to like remember it or anything. I just was like, well, let's just talk and see what happens. So yeah, let's start with at your leisure. What do you want to talk about? Like what's those interesting years been like? Like what started and that ended with like doing this odd little group art project for our minds.
Right, right. So I guess it started with me moving from Connecticut to North Carolina, where my mother, grandmother, sister, and nieces were living at the time. And my mother's health was declining, and my sister got pregnant,
Mm.
and they were both taking care of my elderly grandmother. So I was like, "Oh, I'm coming. I'll be
Yeah.
there," kind of thing, without a second
How old were
thought.
you when that happened? When that all?
Um, 24, 23, 24.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a big change. That's like kind of a interesting time to change, because that's like a real transitional phase often when you're you've gone and been on your own now, like you've starting to
For a
find your
little
adult
bit.
self in your life, and then I think like mid-20s is like a tough one. I really think that rock star age of 27, that legendary, that's when rock stars all die, is when they're 27. I do think there's some hump at 27
Hmm.
that's like really challenging. So that's it. So you're 24. How big a family? What's your family like? How many siblings do you have and everything?
Oh, so we're all super close.
Mm.
I have a biological older brother and sister. Um, my older brother is 10 years older than me. He's more like a father to me. I
Yeah.
like slept in his bed until I was like 10. Just
Mm.
the worst kind of clingy little sister, but yeah.
That's yeah, that res I really that's so interesting. I mean, because
Mm,
what's it when you said, do you have stepsisters or brothers too?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So you're like this mixed family, which, man, I really that's interesting synchronicity. And that 10-year gap, my youngest brother's 9, and that's how me and my other siblings were like right in a row within 3 years. It was like year and a half, year and a half. We kind of feel that more about him too. Now that he's older, it starts to like shift a little, but I don't think it ever will completely. Like there's a quality of like, just because when things started getting weird in our family, like really weird, he was only like 3 or 4, and we
Mm,
we were all kind of like formed personalities already, and it
hmm.
really felt like those next years is like you do a lot of parenting of your
Yeah.
siblings, and you really form these different kinds of bonds. Okay, so you guys are really close, and then a lot of stuff happens at once. That like, were you guys spread out at that point, or were you the only one who had gone away? Are you from, you said North Carolina? That's where you went back to?
Yeah, so we're from Connecticut, but my mother and all of them moved to North Carolina right after I
Yeah.
graduated high school. She wanted to
Okay,
move
gotcha.
somewhere warm. So yeah, at that time it was my sister and I down there. My sister had gotten married, gotten pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
So it was my sister and I were really taking on the brunt of most of the work, the doctor's appointments, the rushed calls to wherever because something crazy was happening, like
Yeah.
all of that my sister and I kind of handled, which definitely strengthened our relationship. But it's interesting the whole parenting your younger siblings thing because now that my mom is gone, there have just been times where I've gone to my older siblings for like advice or
Yeah.
things like that, and it's just not the same. And it's so frustrating. It's
Mm.
frustrating because it's like, there's just a way that moms say things,
Yeah.
and it's just that way, and no one else can do that, and it's changed our relationship in a way. I
Mm.
Although we're still very close and we're still right there for each other whenever, it's just so different now.
What do you think like do you think moms have like a different way of saying things, or like we have a different way of receiving things from our moms?
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like there's
yeah.
this thing I think about a lot that I don't know, somebody said in when I was a kid. I don't think they even said it at Sunday school. I don't know who said it, but they said like Jesus was never a prophet in his hometown. Like there, he's just like the carpenter's kid, you know? And I
Mm,
was thinking about this
mm,
because my mom does these like silent retreats, and she knows some of these like guru types, and so my brothers and I, we like talk about them sometimes. And for us, to some degree, I was always like, oh, this guy, he's just a guy. Like he's
mm,
definitely just a person.
mm,
But I think it's like important for us to allow certain people to be like, that's the priest, that's and then like the mom is like somebody who made us, or yeah, I'll just leave it at that, made us, even if they
yeah.
didn't birth you, they like make you,
Right.
they're helping you and nurturing you. So like there's something that we're like able to receive from them, you know what I mean?
We're
Not
open
just that
to
they
it. We're
probably,
open to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We
but
we
then that's
want to
like,
receive whatever they're giving us. We trust them.
yeah. What was
Yeah.
you said, can you give me like, I don't know, it just felt like maybe there was a specific memory behind that. You were saying like one of the hardships about like the calls and the hospital stuff with your sister, like you've moved back home to help out with everything going on. Like, is there something that like comes to mind specifically about that as an example of just like one of those just one of those days, one of those things that you're like, wow, this is what we're doing now. This is what life is at this moment. And it's not the easiest?
Yeah, I think, God, there were so many. There were just so many times where everything was just chaotic. There were calls. It's because at one point my grandmother's health got so bad that we could no longer take care of her and she had to go into a home. And if
Hmm.
you know anything about nursing homes, they don't always give the best care.
Right.
So there are times where we've had to rush in and be an advocate because that's really what you need if you have someone going into a home. You have to have good family advocacy. So times where it's like, no, she likes things this way. No, we said leave her radio on because that is what she needs. So
Yeah.
although it's not that big of a deal, when my sister calls me and says, "Oh yeah, the radio was off again today when I went up there," now I have to go to the head nurse and now it has to be a thing. And yeah, there are times where someone
It's it
was having to get CPR or
like in
n-
the nursing facility.
yeah, so
Yeah.
the time there were times where my grandmother was rushed to the hospital
Gotcha.
from the nursing home, and immediately my thought process was, this is it. This is the end. This is so I have all of those emotions running towards me as I'm driving to the hospital or getting to where she is. And there'll be times I walk in the room and she's just like, "Hey." And it's like, "Oh
Yeah.
God." And
Yeah.
that happened so many times
Yeah.
throughout that time period in my life.
Yeah.
Uh,
So that's a very surreal thing. You're like constantly on this high alert. And I totally know what you mean about those small details about the radio thing, because it's like it's just a little thing until you're like, oh, you're really not listening. Like you're really
right.
not caring individually with these people. So it creates like a really destabilizing sort of feeling to the whole situation. Like you can't relax because there's no one else watching.
Right. And you lose a little bit of control when your family member goes into a nursing home.
Yeah.
You can no longer just check on them the same way as you could when they were in your house. So, and you just try to have that same amount of comfort that you would provide.
Yeah.
And as far as I've known my entire life, I'm 26. My grandmother always had music playing,
Hmm.
always. And I'm sure that would happen, way before I was born. So if this is something that she's accustomed to, we need to make it
Yeah.
happen. So it was like
Yeah.
one of the only things that we could control.
Mm.
And that's why it held so much weight.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, so what was going on? So what were you doing in Connecticut before? Because you, how old are you now? Like, how long did this? I'm trying to get a sense of like this timeline of like, and
Yeah.
sort of the shape of what your life is, and then what this change is, and then what those changes result in that brings you to where you are now.
Right. So when my family moved, I was in a relationship and I was living with that guy in Connecticut. He ended up moving with me to North Carolina.
Mm.
Didn't work. That's a whole nother story. But
But it's definitely part of that story for
oh,
sure.
oh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
so a part of the story.
Yeah.
um
When you moved to North Carolina, did you so let me actually stay in Connecticut for a minute. What were you
yeah.
doing in Connecticut at the time?
In Connecticut, I was working towards finishing up my EMT certification.
Oh,
Um
cool.
yeah, yeah. I had actually just gotten like my dream job a month before I had to move down. And
What
that
was the
was
dream job?
it was just working at one of the local ambulance companies, and
Mhm.
it wasn't anything huge, but it was something I would drive by it every day as I was nannying and going to
Yeah.
school to become an EMT. It's like I would drive by it every day. Like one day I'm going to be there. One day I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Um, so when I got it, it was just like, it was an amazing feeling to finally get in there. Um,
Was the becoming an EMT, was that like, there's two different kinds of well, there's probably a million different, but broadly speaking, generalizing, I'll just say, you like there's jobs where you're like, oh, this resonates with me. This is what I really want to be doing, and blah blah blah, that kind of a thing. Or and then there's jobs that you're like, this seems like a good idea. I'd be good at this. I can do this.
Mm.
Which direction was this EMT thing for you?
Oh, it was definitely a this resonates with me. I need
Yeah.
to do this job. My mother was in a wheelchair my entire life. I think
Mm.
she was 25, 26 when she
Mm.
lost the use of her legs completely. Um,
Wow.
yeah, with two small children at the time, so I can imagine
Holy smokes.
what her life was at that point. But, I say that to say that helping was just second nature to me. You know, whether I
Yeah.
was lifting her up over a curb or reaching something she couldn't reach,
Right.
it's just what I do.
Yeah.
So,
Do you mind if I ask, like, was your dad around at all with that stuff?
my dad was in and out of my life until I
Yeah.
was about 8 or 9, I believe, and then it was just I didn't see him anymore at all.
And even when you were a little kid, you said in and out. So him and your mom weren't like he wasn't there like doing the cabinet grabbing
No,
and stuff.
no.
Yeah.
No, he
Gotcha.
would come hang out with us sometimes, and I'm sure they had a relationship at some point where, like, when they were together, that he was more
Mm.
helpful or what have you. But my memories of him are strictly just playing with us, maybe taking us out to the park every once in a while, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well, especially like if your mom's 26 with a couple kids already, she's also like a young mom. And that's like, I don't know, I had a young mom and it took me a long time to realize like you're really you're kind of counter parenting, each other, like because
Mm,
you're growing together. Like when I think about, I'm sure you feel this way too. Like when I think about, I mean, I'm 33, and if I think about if I had 4 kids like my parents had at this time in their life, it'd just be such a different life,
oh yeah, oh
But
yeah.
you really do. I think I resented some of it when I was younger, like things my mom. I was like, why couldn't she just be more of like a normal, like a mom who's like always momming. Um, but you realize later, like I'm sure you had this experience, like you very evidently, just even in your describing, like you create this odd bond where like they're your parent, but you're also parenting them. You need them for a million reasons, but
Mm,
they also really need you. And so it
mm-hmm.
creates like strong bonds, but also really strong like intertwining.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was that like for you?
She had more of that with my older siblings, definitely.
Mhm.
My older brother she had when she was 18 or 19,
Mm.
something like that.
Yeah.
So they definitely had more of the raising each other type of relationship. And
Yeah.
then my older sister is 4 years younger than him.
Mhm.
Um, and then by the time I came along, I was really just their baby alive. I was just their baby doll that they could play with. So I didn't really have to do anything or have any responsibility or they
That's fair. Probably not as much, I guess, but I don't know. I think I mean, I didn't expect that, but it's of like of course, it's like when you say I mean, you still like it put you on this path where like what you want to do is be an EMT or like what
yeah.
you want to do professionally is like, well, what I do is help people out and try to take care of people. And I think also another thing about like people who go towards medical care, especially on that like basic level, like we're not talking about some like surgeon who comes in and does a thing and goes away. Like, we're talking about for the mundane stuff, reaching things from the shelf. It's like, I don't know, there's something people don't talk much about like the awkwardness of that, like how intimate and like in a in a not particularly romantic seeming. I'd still think very quite poetic, but like
Mm,
it's I don't know. My mom had like a weird surgery thing like last year and complication and just trying. You just got to help them with the most basic stuff, and it's very like sometimes some people will never see their parents in that context. So
yeah.
that's just why I think even if you've like, didn't like missed the really young years of her and she kind of had worked her rhythms out by the time you came along. Still, I mean that's a lot. That's like it's a very core to, I would imagine, how your identity forms.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely. I couldn't imagine a life where I wasn't helping in some way. I feel very
It also is
uncomfortable when
like,
I'm not.
oh, keep going. Sorry.
No, no, I'm just saying I've noticed that even just in my everyday, if I'm not doing something to help in some way, it feels weird. And it sounds super cheesy to say that, like, yeah, okay, you're such a great person, but
Well,
truly,
no, I think it does create an interesting because it's like I'm thinking about this a lot with like, how do I say this? If you grow up on some level living with constant consideration of other people, like that's a good thing. Like that's good. It's good to think about other people and be empathetic and all that stuff. But I think if we don't if we don't get a chance to like form a sense that like, oh no, but I am sovereign and I do exist and I matter too, as much
mm,
as I think other people matter, they think I matter and I think I'm allowed to think I matter too, and I'm
mm.
good and I'm valid, and that's all good. If you don't get that step, part of me thinks like there's parts of us that
Shh,
y- you
sorry.
oh, puppy dog. No,
So
not at all.
sorry.
That's there's nothing. Dog barks, they're always welcome. There's like a time comes when you're gonna have to answer that part of you. That part of you
Yeah.
is gonna be, and I think sometimes when we grow up quick, it's like, yeah, it feels weird because you're like, oh no, I'm such a good person, but like on some level, you're like kind of annoyed by it. I feel like, and
Mm,
if not exactly, at least I'm speaking for myself, but like there's I'm hesitating to say like a resentment grows for it,
mm,
but there's some part of oneself I think that the reason I was thinking about this was I was thinking like how I've been really it's been really important to me, and I think in the wider culture it's been really important to do a lot of validating, like a lot of acknowledging of people's experiences, and honoring their weaknesses, which I don't mean to attach moral value to that, but like literal weaknesses, like things that make it harder for you than other people, and
mm.
things like that necessarily, or even let's not even compare to other people, things that just are hard for you to deal with, honoring that.
Yeah.
And then I think what I've noticed in myself, and I wonder if this is starting to resonate in the larger, the culture at large also, is like once you've validated all that for yourself and gone like, no, like my pain does matter and it is hard to be alive, and you no longer feel like you're fighting to be recognized. Like once you're, you've kind of gotten your grievances out and had them honored, and we all go like, hell yeah. At least personally, I find there's sort of this next step that's like stoicism, which is like
Mm,
start to go like, okay, yes, now that I'm validated, do I want to feel like I'm starting to feel a little like a victim when I only talk about the things that are
uh,
fucked up with me?
yeah.
And then you start to move this way of like, I'm going to start, yes, now that I've honored it and I don't have to resent that I am not ever allowed to be weak, I would actually like to be strong. I would like to choose to overcome things that are difficult for myself. But I think part of it is like if you and that's always been traditional patriarchal kind of thing, is like
Mm,
just tough through it. But I wonder if it's not the reason in the culture at large, and we're experiencing it, is like because as a child you don't feel like you get that validation.
mm.
You go right to stoicism. Everyone's like, just suck it up right away, just live for other people, just help other people. So this part of you later has to go like, wait, don't I matter? Can't I be pudding and I'm still valuable? Can't I like just be loved for no reason? Can I be like honored that way?
Mm,
And that, I think that's a really necessary part to go through, the honoring of the self, and
mm.
like because if you don't do that, it'll always be somewhere in the back of you. And like if you don't do that, you'll never truly be able to go like, okay, and now I would like to overcome my impulses and my difficulties. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if you're
yeah.
demanded to do that second part first without being validated. Anyway, that was
That's
rambly, but do
no,
you know what
no,
I mean? Like,
no.
what do you
That's a
think of that?
super valid point. I am there. I am in a place, and it's funny that you're saying this because that's my thing that I've been trying to work on recently. It's like I no longer want to feel like the victim of these past few years. I no longer want to
Yeah.
feel like, oh God, all these bad things happen to me. Um, and I'm struggling. I'm struggling to not feel like that victim anymore. And I think you made a really good point about um giving giving the opportunity to feel it, giving the opportunity to say that no, it's
Yeah.
okay to feel that way, and then go past, okay, what am I going to do with those emotions now? Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I
because
didn't
I
mean to
don't know
jump
what to
through
do with
like
them.
cuz I think we still need to talk a little more about like your experiences. I don't mean to jump to that end part yet.
No, no, no.
But I do think it's like that's interesting to hear cuz I don't know. I've been like even doing this podcast, I go back and forth cuz I'm like some weeks, some days I'm like sometimes I got to leave therapy because I've gone to too much therapy and I'm like I'm spending too much time at therapy talking about my problems. I feel like I'm keeping my problems going, by like coming in there when things are starting to be good for months or weeks on end. And you're just like trying to come up with the reasons you feel fucked up still or things you need to work through. Once I feel like I've entered that game, I'm like, wait, why am I doing that?
Mhm.
And sometimes even with this podcast, I'm like, am I moderating like my mental health check-ins? Like, can they just be check-ins or meditation time as opposed to like am I just talking every week about like trying to find new ways? I'm so fucked up. I feel so broken. And then kind of like perpetuating that feeling. And it's like, I feel like I'm
Mhm.
always going back and forth between like, what do I need to honor? What's like not feeling attended to? And then what do I need to be like a coach to? Like, you know what I mean? Like, do you ever do sports or anything like that or have a teacher who was like believed in you? So like they would ask more of you? You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah, definitely, like, I had the teacher kinda aspect of someone
Yeah.
who just check in and really, like, ask questions and expect a truthful answer kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, you weren't able to just brush it off or
Right.
yeah, I
And
don't
that
know.
like to me there's something if you trust somebody, if you trust that you are loved already, if you trust that they do think you're great as you are, then I really value when they're like, I think you can do better than this. I think that you can like pull through this or show up for this in a better way. And I feel like almost like that, like I become my own coach where I'm like in the best versions of it. The worst versions are I just like start talking to myself like such an asshole, I'm like a
Mm,
piece of shit. And
mm.
I don't think that's valuable. But I think the other version, if you can be kind and expect a lot of yourself, it's like, I don't know, it feels empower. That's something I know I say this a lot, and I'm sorry if I repeat myself on the podcast, but that dialectic between like um validation and victimhood, I guess, on my own personal talking to myself, and then that feeling of my identity. I'm like, am I strong or am I being beaten up? Or I don't know. That's always tough. It's hard to feel that because eventually I'm like, I want to allow myself to see myself as a healed person or a stronger person or a healing person or something.
Mm.
Yeah, I don't know. It can be you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
feels sometimes like you're struggling, like you're talking to this thing every day that is yourself and being like, what are you now? I don't know. Are you
Yeah.
strong today or what? Yeah.
I feel like I've been so disconnected from who I am, um, because I just did a lot of dissociation during all
Yeah.
of the traumatic events that I yeah, I've been so disconnected. So recently, or upon my move here, I've had just that constant narrative of just like, who are you? Are you this victim of everything that's happened to you? Should you feel like a victim? Then I have the thoughts about like, you're not the only one who went through all of this. Your whole family went through all of this with you. Why do you feel like you're
Mm.
the victim? But then I have to
Yeah.
like
Like your
counter
instinct
that
is to
with,
like, yeah, your instinct is to like
yeah,
invalidate it. Like almost like if you
immediately.
say like if you invalidate it, maybe you won't have to deal with it. Like if you go like, hey, who the fuck do you think you are? This
Right.
happened to everyone. Then maybe you get off the hook and you don't have to face your feeling. That's really funny.
Right.
I've never like noticed that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, it's somehow like not a you thing anymore. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't know what
it's
that's
like
about.
wow, that's so I've never thought of it in those terms of like I think because we tell ourselves we're being tough and doing something difficult by being like, "Oh, it's not really about you. It's not your pain. It happened to everybody. It happens to everybody. So fucking suck it up and then also like let it go." And that in our
Mhm.
and in the culture and the way we talk about it, it sounds like, "Oh, you're being tough, you're being stoic." But really, I think there's something in there where you're letting yourself off the hook because this you're just ignoring like a big wound that's like real, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you
Yeah.
have this thing that was difficult for you, that's somehow you still feel stuck there. Or I mean, I think the dissociation thing you just mentioned is a. I mean, I know from the conversations and reading and stuff like that that it's a certainly a common response to like trauma. But I mean, my weird episode this week about feeling like a ghost, which was a really weird one. I don't know. I think I was having really. I had a psychiatry appointment yesterday, which I think I'm managing my meds poorly and doing some self-care things poorly and
Well.
but that dissociation is like where is often the first thing I experience my girlfriend has said in the past like she's freaked out by this thing I say often where like I don't feel like a person. I'm not sure I exist. I'm like not sure I exist. And that like freaks her out and I'm always like, why would that freak you
Mm.
out? But now I start to understand
Of
more.
all the
It's like
things.
of all the things, it
Yeah.
doesn't sound that bad. But it's like it totally makes sense when I start to be like, so what does that mean if you don't think you're a person? Does that mean you think things don't matter? Do you think like actions don't have
Mm.
consequences or I don't matter? Or are you gonna be here to take
It can be a
care of
slippery
anything? Or
slope.
yeah, the dissociation can be really tough. And maybe that's why it becomes so crucial to like engage with it because on its most basic level, if you don't feel like you exist or you matter or everybody goes through this shit, so you should just fucking disregard it. It wasn't really you, it was everybody who went through it. Like, you never, I don't know, there's something about that dissociation that seems to just grow. Like, it
Mhm.
might start as like out of sync with your own sense of identity, but then it just like starts to touch everything. Like, everything starts to seem not real, you
Oh
know?
yeah, it grows into a monster. And I was in therapy when I was in the States. When everything first happened, I wasn't feeling anything. I was completely removed from it, just going through the motions. And I remember just talking to my therapist, like, well, why can't I just do life like this from now on? Like, what do you
Yeah.
mean this is a bad thing? And she's like, because it'll start to touch everything. Everything in your life will just become numb, you know? And
Yeah.
I and it did. It totally did. And it took me a while to be uncomfortable with that numbness because for a while it was just like, fine, great. I don't have to feel anything. Perfect.
Oh,
But it eventually became uncomfortable. And I think that was one of the biggest factors in my move. I I felt stuck. I didn't know how to live where I was living anymore. I had no desire to even get up and participate in my own life. So
yeah.
this move somewhere in me knew that I needed to do something extreme to slap myself awake in a way.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what I've been working on doing is just being more present within myself, allowing myself to feel all the things that I really just pushed down
Mm.
um, or made excuses for. I think I said in my email, I talked about my whole mantra of the name of the game being survival.
Mm.
Um, and that was super helpful sometimes when I was going through all of my moments where, say I slept in longer than I was supposed to, or I didn't do a homework
Mm-hmm.
assignment. I didn't let it pressure me because I'm like, you know what, you had a hard year. The name of the game is survival. If you gotta sleep in or order a pizza, then you do that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there are
Yeah.
times where it's like, okay, but you are self-medicating in ways that you know you're not supposed to,
Yeah.
or you're dealing you're in a relationship with someone that you know you're not supposed to be in a relationship with
Hmm.
because you're doing this name of the game, a survival thing, and it it ended up being something that I had to really check in on because I started to use it
Yeah.
as a crutch.
Yeah. Yeah. That resonates really hard. I mean, I guess that's where I don't know. My dad did this thing that I kind of I feel I always interpret it this way. I don't know if he's ever like said this or acknowledged this, but my dad was like kind of this high achieving golden boy kind of thing in his family, and then in his marriage a little bit, and as this dad, and at some point I think the pressure was just too great, and he felt perhaps like his only the value he had was like all external or something. And it seemed almost like he got this like drug problem. Well, he kind of like mental breaks and then drug problem and ended up getting disbarred. So he's no longer this like lawyer. He's no longer these. It was like he stripped away all the external values, and he became like unhealthy and just, you know, everything that might appeal externally. And it felt like what he was trying to do was see if he was still loved. Like see if like, oh, well, what if I keep being less and less impressive or less and less and I've started to notice in myself sometimes it can be I don't really I hate the idea of slippery slopes because I don't really think they're real on some level. Like there's thresholds to everything,
Mm.
that we can't explain that we're like, you know. But
I think if you don't check
with
in, I think that's my thing with slippery slopes, or what I imagine it in my
yeah,
brain is like if you see yourself getting somewhere and you don't check in, like
yeah,
if you don't have that willpower to say, okay, maybe I need to take a step back, then that's when it can
right.
become something more.
Well, yeah, and I think it's like I do think the name of the game of survival is real, and like you have to be like real with yourself when that's going on. I think
Yeah.
there's almost like once you're able there's some quality of like once you're able to check in and go like, do I really want to be doing this behavior that's balming a thing in me? Um, that you're like almost like as soon as you're able to ask that conversation is also synchronous with able to go like, and I would prefer to make a better choice, you know?
Right.
You
Right.
you go through like a brackish zone of like being able to do the Fiona Apple, well-made mistake thing where you're like, is this the best for me? No. Is it going to be good for me in these other ways that is worth it right now? Yes.
Yeah.
Fine. But it's funny like how quickly like once you can even pay attention and go like, "Oh, I'm doing self-medicating behaviors. Maybe do I want to?" I don't know. That's been tough for me. Like, and I think that's why self care is starting to become like this like punchline in the culture at large. Like
Mm.
people are just like self care because which is unfortunate to me because I don't know. I don't think sometimes self care is simply doing something that feels nice, but what it should be is something that like offers care that like
Right.
helps heal
Betters
you or grow
you.
you. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, so you get this job, this dream job, and then shortly after end up moving to help your fam, which makes sense because I mean, you just said it. Like you grew up wanting to help people, your dream job to help people, and then like the most important people in your life are like, we need help.
Let's go. Yeah.
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 What was that ask or what was that like situation and how did it I don't know. I'm trying to get a sense of like, so you're living with this guy. Like, where did you go get your own place down there? Were you suddenly back living with family again? Like, what kind
Um
of vibe
s-
was that?
yeah, so it was me and my boyfriend at the time. We just moved into my mother's guest room.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an interesting dynamic having been out of the house for a few years.
Yeah.
But like I said, we were always really close and we never really had any huge arguments or anything that would make it a hostile living situation or super hard to do. It was just an adjustment. And I was
Yeah.
happy to be back around my family.
Yeah.
So that was what it initially was, that we moved in with them, and then it was either 6 months to a year after that he and I got our own place still in the city. Um, just because the my mother needed a kidney and she had been pushed back on the transplant list, so it wasn't so
Wow.
immediate anymore.
Yeah.
So we ended up just staying close, but we didn't have to be in the house because she wasn't going to
Yeah.
be having the surgery that in that time frame.
Yeah. So you're caring for your grandmother and your mother during this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was I don't think that I realized how much it stressed me out until I was in the doctor's office getting something for anxiety. Like,
Yeah.
it was just like, "Oh, yeah, this is what I do. I'm here to help. Like, yes, I'll do this. I'll run up and down the stairs 100 times if you need me to. Like, I am here to do that." Until
Yeah.
it was just a moment where I was just a constant ball of anxiety and stress, and I didn't know how to even function.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let's maybe I'll kind of like blend this into the six quick cues. We'll kind of keep those involved in here. So like, how did you end up? So how did you end up in this office wherever this was and doing this anxiety medication thing? I mean, did you, the first two questions are always like, have you been diagnosed with anything, and then what have you tried for it?
right.
Um, but what was like the precipitating event that got you? Like, how did you wind up getting care, and where'd you find it and stuff like that?
Um, I went to just my primary care doctor after speaking with my best friend at the time, and it was just I was just having anxiety attacks. I would just be trying to relax at home in a moment where I wasn't needed and I couldn't sit still.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't able to turn it off. And I've always had just kind of underlying anxiety type things where it might take me a little longer to come back down after an event. But either way, I just went to my primary care and spoke to her about it. And I don't, it was hard to get on the medication because, like I said, being an African American woman, it's just not something that is openly talked about in our community, mental health. It's just, we're starting to, the younger generation is starting to be more open and let it be known that, hey, having brown skin doesn't make you immune to mental health disorders. But
Yeah.
um growing up, there's no like, oh yes, she had a hard time so she got on medication, or you don't hear any stories about anything, and it's just, oh, he's crazy or she's crazy, but there was never any diagnosis of anything. So
Mm.
even being prescribed medicine for anxiety, I felt such shame, just the shame that came with it. And then eventually, when I got on medicine for depression, again, just huge amount of, this shouldn't be happening to me because
Mm.
I'm Black. What do you mean? I don't have mental health problems. And
Wow.
that's been a huge thing I've had to overcome. And I'm still working through, honestly. Yes, I'll still take my medicines as needed, but there's still just like this ingrained
Wow.
guilt in a way.
Does that extend to just like non-Medicaid stuff too, like just therapy and things like that? That kind of does that cultural like thing? Do you feel extend to that as well, or is it mostly just the medication thing, or like do people seek out therapy that you grew up around?
In my experience, I don't feel like it's as heavy as far as therapy.
Yeah,
Definitely medication, definitely being diagnosed with anything is a no-no.
got it.
It's like,
Yeah, that's interesting because then it's like, oh, that's like on a paper. Somebody stamped. I mean, I avoided for a long time because I was like worried about being like, I'm gonna have this label now. You know,
yeah, yeah, and
that's
I think
interesting. I
you
Oh, keep going. Sorry, I didn't hear.
no, 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 I'm just saying, just thinking about it now, like, you grow up and you think about the times where someone was saying, "Oh, yes, she's crazy." But the knowledge I have now working in EMS and learning about mental health, it's like, no, she was schizophrenic. Like there are
Mm, mm,
specific telltale signs of people who have had serious mental health issues around me and just in my community growing up that were undiagnosed because of the stigma, because we don't do that.
mm.
And it's really a shame, and it's harmful, and it's sad to see. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say, I want to just say also that that there seems to be something universal in that like desire to invalidate yourself. Like, I mean, I'm like, I'm like a fucking straight white guy. Like I've got all the privilege to be whatever I want in the world and and stuff like that. And I would just use that itself to be like, I don't have any fucking real problems. People like me don't get problems.
Mm-hmm.
I don't and how you don't do anyone any favors by not by doing that. Like something I think a lot, and that schizophrenic comment is so fucking good. I still say the word crazy often because I like it, and it's I it makes me laugh. I like to use it for myself, whatever.
Mm.
But I think it speaks to this issue commonly with mental health where we just go. It would be like saying like it would be like if you broke your foot, saying like, oh, that person's broken. What do you mean they're broken? Yeah, they're just broken. Like,
Mm.
no, their foot's broken or their hand's broken. Like, there's a specific thing that we can look at and has a specific set of challenges to deal with, but like other challenges you don't have to deal with. And it by being specific about what the thing is, like schizophrenic's an interesting example. I was talking with somebody the other day about schizophrenia stuff, and we were noting how there's this like one common thing I've heard from people who had family members who were schizophrenic, totally unrelated to each other, was like this thing involving windows, like either
Mm.
covering up all their windows or like putting something like stuff on the windows
Mm-hmm.
and things. And I was like, that's so interesting that something that seems so abstract, like they're crazy, like a mental thing, has a very specific behavior that happens
Yeah.
with it. And there's great power in seeing that because yeah, then I really think this as like a metaphor for personal growth too, is even like once I can name and see the shape of a fear or a problem, it's no longer that scary. It's just like it's not really a fear in the dark now. It's just a set of circumstances to figure out how to overcome. It's not like this murky thing of just like, oh, crazy. Oh, that's,
Mm-hmm.
impossible. So I know I think that you're totally right that there is you're really just we're all just like kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by like instinctively anything that we do to avoid acknowledging the issue,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah, and I think fear plays a huge part in why the African American community doesn't seek out that type of help. And some of it is warranted. We haven't had the
Yeah,
best relationship with doctors and people
completely.
that have, so like when you look back and you follow it, there are reasons as to why there's hesitation there, but it growth is always important. You always have to look forward and figure out what works for you. And I think that's
Yeah.
what the new generation is doing. It's like, okay, I hear what my parents are saying. I hear we have to be cautious in this world because we still have to be cautious in this world no matter what. But
Yeah.
I need to do something. I need to better myself. And I think that's the path that we need to be on.
Well, so since you got that diagnosis, and tell me a little more about that. You said so your primary care physician, did they refer you to a psychiatrist or did they just were they just like, I think this will help you, or how is that?
Yeah,
Which one?
so I just sat down in her office and, answered. I don't know if it's like a worldwide generic kind of questionnaire or it's like 1 through 10 kind of thing. How do you
Mm-hmm.
feel in this
It
way?
it must be because I did one of those for like ADHD or something. I did some worksheets or when I first saw my.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So it was just something as simple as that. It maybe took about 7 minutes, and so it was her assistant that did it, and then the doctor came in, and she's like, "Well, yeah, according to your answers, I think that you have anxiety, and we're just gonna prescribe you this." And it felt a little too easy in a
Yeah.
way, and like that didn't help. That didn't help my guilt at all because it was like, how
Right.
you don't even know me, you don't even know what I'm actually going
Yep.
through. How do you know I need this? You know, it
Yep.
was hard to battle that within myself.
I think that that's so valid. And it's like it really does it's good and bad. It's like
Hmm.
kind of nice on some level that there is access to these things, but I mean I feel I saw my dad overprescribed like crazy. I think I see a lot of people. I mean it's like antibiotics. It's like do you really need to take antibiotics? Because it's making super flu bugs and we're all gonna, be
Right.
living in like I Am Legend or something because of it. But like just watched that the other day, so it's in my head. But like but it's like that where it does then become incumbent on us individually, which can be a tough ask of like quote unquote crazy people to like
Right.
check in with themselves when you don't have the training. Like we're not doctors. We just have to read a lot online and pay attention to how we feel. So you started on, can I ask what anxiety medication they put you on?
Oh goodness, I cannot think of the name of it right now. Visceral?
Oh, I don't know
Visceral.
that one. Visceral.
Maybe. Yeah, something I
And
could
it
take as needed, because at that time
got
in
it.
my life, it was just I just kept having random bursts of it that I couldn't come back from. So
Yeah.
when and if I needed it, I could take it because I wasn't comfortable being on something that I had to take every day.
Yeah.
Um, so that's what she prescribed at that time. And I at that time in my life, was I still did I start school yet? I think I was um starting my first semester of college during that time as well. So that was also having a huge impact on how I was handling everything as well. Just trying to
Mhm.
balance my time, and yeah, it
Did
was
it
hard.
help?
Um yes, it did help. I think it's hard. I hesitate on that just because It it is a little bit of a blur. That whole time in my
Yeah.
life is a little bit of a blur, especially with just the dissociation that I didn't realize I was doing until I started therapy, and that's been
Mm,
super helpful to, like you say, put a name to it.
mm.
Um,
Was
but
this is so this is college. Were you like partying and stuff too?
no, not at all. I had
Interesting.
no desire to do any of that, but I was working night shift and going to school during the day.
Yeah.
So just still the kind of no
Yeah.
sleep, not taking care of myself.
Right. But I'm just curious because of the self-medicating aspect of you didn't fall into that like using drinking a lot or anything like that.
No, no,
Yeah.
it wasn't drinking. No, I think once everything happened,
Yeah.
once I lost my grandmother, my mother, and then, well, really after my mother is when everything kind of just imploded upon itself. Um,
Mm.
and I I'm all for using marijuana for medical reasons, and I'm all for recreational marijuana,
Yeah.
whatever floats your boat. Um but I think I got to the point where I was using it to not have to be a part of reality anymore.
Yeah.
And
I
that's where my
fucking feel that.
self-medication thing came
Yeah.
in. Yeah, the
Well,
more I
so
could numb, the more I could not have to feel anything
oof.
was where I wanted to be.
And that was like fairly recent then because that's like so college is when you first get exposed to some kind of do you still take anxiety medication or did you stop or like how did you because you mentioned you started taking antidepressants at one point too.
Right. I'm no longer taking the anxiety medicine. I have it just in case.
Yeah.
But I think I just needed it for that time period in my life because I
Yeah.
was just so all over the place. Um,
Yeah.
and that's another huge, huge lesson that I've taken away from this is just like it doesn't have to be a permanent thing, because that was one of my fears. Like, I don't want to get on medication and have to be on medication for the rest of my life. Um, and that's something I've had to battle with because I'm now taking antidepressants. So I don't
Mm.
know when and if I'll be able to ever stop that. But at least with the anxiety medicine, I did need it for a period and then I no longer needed it. Um,
How did how did you end up? I totally appreciate that. I do think some things are like that, and I always feel like anti-anxiety medications are one of those things that you got to moderate for sure. You pay attention. I don't know. I'm the reason I'm hesitant now in the midst of that sentence is because I also have the attitude I don't like the idea of having something I'm gonna take every day or where maybe without end. It just makes me feel weird or something out of like I don't know. You know what I mean? If there was like an apocalypse and I couldn't get medicine anymore, like do I just have to but you're like the
yeah.
world would be so nuts at that point that it wouldn't matter anyway. All my ADHD would actually be probably really helpful. But like but I sorry, the hesitation was just because literally like yesterday, I see my psychiatrist and realized like I was having these bad episodes, and she was like, "Did you take your medicine at this time on those days?" And I'd be like, "No," and I realized like, "Oh wow, that's probably
Mm,
very connected." And at least I have to experiment for a while, trusting this this experiment with my doctor and myself that's not been running that long of going like, okay, I'm gonna do my job and just take it at the right times and see if that helps balance. But for sure, I don't know, like I've taken Xanax and some anxiety stuff in the past, and I mean, I took a Xanax. The first time I think I took Xanax, I was like, I felt like buzzed. I was like, I don't know how people could take this every day. Like it felt like drinking a couple beers or something to me.
mm,
And I think that really speaks to also how it affects everyone differently. And like
right.
often, like if you really need it, like I take Adderall, which is just amphetamine. It's like speed, but
Hmm.
it doesn't feel that way for me ever. I've known friends, even family, who's tried it and they like their heart goes crazy and they're like, this is too much. So it really does speak to like paying attention to if it's right for you and stay in touch with that. How did you
Yeah.
start? Are
I
you
had to
still
do
taking
that.
antidepressants? How'd you end up on antidepressants?
Yeah. So after my mother died is when I was diagnosed with depression. And that is when I was given Effexor. I don't know if I'm saying it right.
Sounds
Effexor, I
familiar.
believe.
I'm gonna
Um,
Google it while we're talking.
yeah, it was terrible. I actually had to get off of it. I
Wow.
remember going into my therapist's office and telling her that my primary care had put me on Effexor, and she was immediately just like, no, 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 you don't need to be on this
Really?
medicine. Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
That's
and
an intense reaction.
that was a little scary, honestly, because I I trust her opinion so much. So to walk in to have her have this moment of just like fear, she's like, just be very careful if you ever try to come off of it, because weaning off of this medicine is just really bad. Um, I ended up
Hmm.
coming off of it. It made me way too numb. It took away all of my
Um.
emotions. I was already numb. Um, but then when I got on
Jeez.
the
Yeah.
Effexor, it was just I felt nothing. I felt
Ugh.
nothing. I remember having a moment uh, where I was, like I said, I worked night shift and I would often catch the sunrise. And that would be like my favorite part of the shift. And I remember being on the Effexor and seeing the sunrise and just being like, meh. And I
Ugh.
think that was the moment I knew, like, I was like, wait, 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 no, 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 no. This has always been something that I've loved. Like, why am I not feeling warm and just like
Yeah.
awed by this beauty? And that was the moment I realized, okay, this medicine is not for me. And then I was
Wow.
on Lexapro,
Mm.
and I had an allergic reaction to that. It just it made me swollen.
Whoa. Yeah.
uh
Crazy.
yeah, and it just something, and I don't know why, but I now I'm on Wellbutrin.
How's that for you?
What was that?
How's that for you?
Well, Wellbutrin is, it's working. I like that. I like that I felt more like myself after I took it.
Mhm.
Um, and it brought me back to a place of, at least, even if I didn't get out of the bed that day, I at least had the thought to get out of the bed that day. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
maybe the
right.
next day I could do it. It gave me
Yeah.
the possibility to try to do things again.
Yeah.
So far it's working well, but I do still struggle with the daily. I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. Um
How long have you been, so is this like a fairly recent foray into trying out these medications and stuff like that? How long have you been doing that
yes.
for?
Yeah, it's very recent. I got on my Wellbutrin 2 weeks before I moved here, and I've been here for 3 months. So
Mm.
4 or 5 months I've been on it.
Yeah.
Um,
New. It's new.
it's very new. It's very new.
Did you did you notice any, like, did you notice any big differences like right away that you were like, or are you still in a phase of like, all right, well, I'm gonna have faith and try this out, but I don't know about this, you know?
I noticed I noticed differences immediately just in my energy level, just
Mm-hmm.
in my desire to do anything, because
Mm.
I had no desire to do anything, and I had finally gotten to a place where it was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So when I did finally take the Wellbutrin and I had that little burst of energy, or even just the thought to eat and take a shower, then I was like, okay, this is good.
Yeah.
And I have to remind myself that. I do.
Yeah.
I have to remind myself that this is something that's helping me.
Yeah.
And then there's another voice in the back of my head that's just like, well, are you depressed, or are you just sad because your mom died?
Right.
And I have to battle with that. And
Yes. That's interesting you say that because I think that's important to honor also. Like, it's a perfectly normal response to be devastated by something like that, by
Mhm.
grief. I something that really struck me, I think about since he said it, when I had my friend Nick on the podcast, who's the only professional I've had on the podcast who works with trauma, a lot in various populations, but veterans are one of the ones who works with a lot too. This is dark. This is like a dark take on it, but he was saying with soldiers like who are in battle or who killed an enemy soldier or something like that, or been, that like everybody who goes through something traumatic um has PTSD, quote unquote, symptoms. Everybody. The thing when they diagnose it and are like, is when it doesn't stop or doesn't go away after a certain amount of like, quote unquote, appropriate time.
Mm.
And I think that is the, I don't know what that line is. I don't know where that's supposed to be. And I do think I'm inclined to say that's, of course, different for everyone, how everyone processes and everything.
Right.
But that is the difference is like, I think the negotiation you say you're having with yourself is like totally correct. Like saying this is hard. This is horrible.
Yeah.
And my body, like, it doesn't even make sense to your animal body, like being like, what the fuck is going on?
Mhm.
And I do think, I guess that's a good question then at the end of that is, for you personally, what was it? Did it just not end? Like, after what amount of time were you like, I think I might need to see someone? Because I also think, sort of like the PTSD thing, I think some of us might get kicked into this appropriate response, and then for whatever reason, it's just like the loop doesn't close. Your body
Mm.
just goes like, no, this is my new self. This is my new response. And that's why maybe some of us need help getting back to our quote unquote, or let's not say back to, move forward to like a sense of ourself as this new world, but
Mhm.
that feels like the self that we've always been. I mean, to me, that's the dissociation feeling has been really scary to face and go like, I don't feel like me, and I don't know why. I'd like to feel like me again.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to have this terrible mantra of just like, so it started as no one will ever love me as much as my mother did.
Mm,
And that is true to a fact, right? Um, but then it turned into no one loves me.
mhm,
And it was a really dark kind of time period in my life. Um, and I think it was for a few weeks before I finally went and got help because it just started to just become darker and darker and, well, if no one loves you, then why are you here, kind of thing.
mm.
So that was the moment I knew I needed to get help. Um, yeah.
Did that has that changed at all? I mean, it gave me so many thoughts that I mean, one, it's just very poetic. It's like love left the world for you, like
Mm,
with your mom, and that's what that seemed to be like the message that your true self received, and that's beautiful
yeah.
in a lot of ways and very very hard to face. You said this thing that you said, if no one's gonna love me, then what's the point of this world or whatever. Has that Do you have a different thought about that now, or what is that? I don't know. I'm just curious if how you had that thought. Like, where are you at with that now? What do you think about that idea at this point?
Yeah. So I ended up speaking about it to my therapist, just because it was a broken record in my head at one point. It was
Mm-hmm.
all I was thinking about every day is, no one loves me. My mom is not here, so that I'll never receive that type of love anymore. And it was just something I couldn't shut up. So I spoke to my therapist about it, and we spoke about just looking at it differently, that it's an honor to have received such
Mm.
love from someone, in that she knows that for me, one of my big life goals is to be a mother. So what she said to me was, no, you'll never experience that type of love before again, rather, but one day you will be a mother and you'll be able to give that love to someone.
Yeah.
And that was really really helpful for me. um it's the idea of gaining that love again in a different form, but I will be able to
Right.
receive it and give it and be a part of it again one day.
Yeah. I think it's interesting to acknowledge that, like, of course, that love is gone because it could only ever have been between you and that person. That's the only way that love has ever and existed, you know? That's not the same love
Mm,
even a very similar mother would give a very similar child. I think that's like the beauty and tragedy of love is it is completely singular, the experience of it.
mm,
So when one goes away, then you know, there's this part of you that is correct. Like that one's never coming back. But I think you're also correct, and your doctor's correct. Like this, us conflating that as being like that means that love is gone forever is, of course, silly. Like love can't go. Love's infinite. It just is there.
right.
But also that like I still think of this thing a lot that somebody said I think Mitchell said it. I think about the time about like he's not afraid of dying because he's not afraid of the time before he was born. Like that it just means he'll go
Mm,
to wherever that was, and he knows that he wasn't in fear and pain before, and I
right.
so whatever it is. And I kind of think that's a nice thought about the life cycles of anything, that like the there's a feeling once you've gained a new love in your life of this tragedy when it goes away. That's just because we can only think in like three dimensions. That's just because we can only think of time one way, but it's like we don't grieve for the love we don't have yet. You know? We're just happy when it arrives.
Mm,
And I don't know, there's something in
right.
that thought that you sparked that was like, it's kind of nice to think, I don't know, I've never thought that before, but that we can all live with this sort of quiet sort of grateful anticipation of like the loves that we are yet to have, you know? And
Yeah,
sort of
yeah,
the way you would be grateful for the loves that you did have, you know? I don't know. That's
yeah. It
hopeful to
it
me.
helped. It helped for sure. I still would have moments where I would think about no one loving me as much as my mother did, and I still have those moments, right? But I've tried to just put a more grateful spin on it. Just have that feeling, but then try to immediately come behind it and be like, but I'm so grateful that I got to
Yeah.
have her love.
How do you feel about the ideas of like self-love and like that term and I don't know, how do you interact with that idea?
I think that it's important, first of all. And it's like that's such a silly thing to say almost, but you run into so many people who don't love themselves. And it's just like, do even within doing the simplest things, like make sure you drink enough water today,
Mm,
and by doing that, you love yourself. I think
right.
it's just super important to find out what it means for you to show yourself love. That means watching your favorite show, do that. That means making sure you keep up with your water intake or you take your dog for a walk or
Mm,
I think it's important to define self-love for yourself.
yeah.
You know.
And again, and I want to ask a question, but you're at any time able to be like, I don't want to talk about that, or I don't want to get
Oh yeah,
down,
no, no, no.
totally anything. But I was wondering, like, were those the kinds of things when you think of like the love that your mom gave you, like, were those the kinds of things, like getting you a snack, getting you water, like, you know, little things like that, or like, what defines that love that you miss and that you are worried about not having again?
Well, yes, my mom would do things like that, like give me snacks and water and things like that. But she was she was more so like a tough love type of person. So I don't
Mm,
exactly think of flowers and cuddly things when I think of my mother. She
yeah,
was a badass, you know. She was,
yeah,
like I said, wheelchair in her mid 20s with two children. Like
right.
she had no option but to be tough and get through things. Um so when I think about the loss that or the love that I have lost from her, I think about just like not having the answers to anything anymore because
Mm,
she was the person that gave you advice whether you wanted it or not.
yeah.
Any of my friends knew if they even said anything about a possible problem in her direction, they were going to get sat down and be like, well, here's what you need to do. And here's how I feel
Mhm.
about it. And, always with love, always with love.
Yeah.
Um, so
Does does she still talk to you? You know what I mean?
I,
I don't even mean
I
to be
don't
so
think so.
spooky about it, like, I mean, my grandpa,
No, no, no,
I do
no.
feel like but you know what I mean? Like, I think of my grandpa a lot in the way that you just described, like, he still talks to me because of the things that he said to me then. You know what I mean? That,
Yeah,
like,
that
yeah,
I
like,
agree to.
that's
That I feel
yeah.
like I have had so many conversations and so many lectures and speeches that it is
Hmm.
ingrained within me. So I do feel like
Yeah.
she speaks to me in that way, but I don't feel like she speaks to me in a way of like, on a more spiritual kind of level, which is unfortunate because I am a spiritual person and I
Yeah.
feel like I'm waiting for the moment where I hear from her. Um
Hmm.
and I haven't. And I don't a thought I've had about it is maybe there's just too much pain there
Yeah.
that I'm not in a place where she could even get to me if she could just because there's still so much. I don't know if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
It does make sense. No, it
Okay.
does. I also
Okay.
the other thought I had, and I get very woo woo also, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't mean to be. I don't know if this is good. Like enter this realm, but it's feels. This is where I want to go right now. This is where I want to feel. Is I
Yeah.
don't know. Based on what you said, it's like could be the pain, but if she's like a tough love mom and like kind of helped you with guidance. I mean, maybe she just knows that's like it's your turn, that you got this, that you've got all those tools, and it's like I don't know. It might be that kind of thing where she's like, she's okay, you know. I don't know. That's making me
Yeah.
laugh because it's like
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
could
I just think
totally
about
see that. I could totally see her.
I don't know that it's just death is so fucking hard. It's so infinite. It's so like impossible because I think maybe because it forces us to look at how impossible the existence is. You're like, wait. So you're just gonna be gone now? Like, how
Mm,
were you even here though? I don't. How are any of us here? Uh, and
right.
the sort of ephemeral spiritual concepts mixed with the weirdness of like DNA. Like you have half of the chromosomes of your mom. Like you are we are so literally the like
Mm,
expressions of the people before us that it's like they kind of can never fully leave because we're here. Like there's this very
right.
literal transmission of them that they remain in the world. I don't know. Sometimes that stuff helps me, but
I've had
I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had so many conversations about death and just all the things that it means when you do die, and
Mm,
I've experienced three different types of deaths, um eh, in my opinion, as far as, my grandmother dying in the nursing home, my and I wrote something about this at one point where I said that nursing home death is lonely because I remember her being lonely. And then my mother dying in the hospital, and I would say hospital death is scary. 'Cause I remember my mother just being terrified.
mm,
And then with my stepfather, he had a short battle with cancer, and he made the decision to do hospice at home. And, you know, and for me, home death or hospice death is peaceful. It's to experience all of them and really go into detail about each one has helped in a way, because they all happened so quickly. It was hard for me to even grasp onto a single one and grieve it properly. So something that did help was sitting down and thinking about how they were all different, and how in turn I reacted to it in a way.
yeah, I think that's so real. Well, man, we've talked for a while. Let me I think just to keep us clicking, I'll do we'll keep going the six quick cues. What
Yeah.
do I always do? So we did the first two. We did the first two pretty good. Then why do I always forget these? I get like so. Do you remember what they are? The third one is I think it's
What
what's something
makes
cheesy you
you?
find inspiring,
Oh,
isn't it? Three? Isn't
I
that
think
three?
so. Yeah,
I think so too.
inspiring.
Did
I
you write them
think
down?
so. I did, because I am always thinking
Yeah,
ahead.
because it goes those first two, and then it's cheesy but inspiring, and then it's dark about you,
Something
and then it's
dark.
last gorgeous thing you saw,
Yeah.
and then wait, no, I'm missing one. Oh, I'm so bad at my own podcast. Oh my god, I'm literally gonna look this up. I'll try to cut this
Yeah, yeah,
part
yeah.
out. Hold
No, fine.
on. Do, 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 do. How many times have I done? No, I was right. I was right. Wait, no, that is all of it. Diagnosed, therapy, cheesy you find inspiring, something dark about you. Oh yeah, I got it right. Oh, I think it's
Yeah,
because I was
yeah,
making the
yeah.
first two one thing. No, so yes, that's right. What's something cheesy you find
Right. We're on
inspiring?
track. We're on track.
Yes, we're doing it.
Um, let's see. Probably uh Michelle Obama's book. And that can
Oh,
kind of seem a little shady, but I don't mean it shady. I think there were a lot of cheesy, heartfelt, just warm moments in the book that
Yeah.
that were inspiring to me.
Do you have any? Was there a specific one you remember that you think about?
Let's see. She spoke about when Obama passed the bill on gay marriage um, being legal everywhere, and how they had lit up the side of the light of the White House with the rainbow colored flags, and how she wasn't allowed to go outside onto the front lawn and do that to see it for security reasons. So she ended up like sneaking out of the White House somehow and like running past all the
Mhm.
Secret Service with one of her daughters and just standing outside and seeing the lights and hearing the cheers. And yeah, she described it much better, but that was one of the
No,
little
that's
cheesy
pretty good
moments.
one. That's really beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, what's something dark about you? We'll go on to that.
Oh, I worked in EMS. There are many a dark things about me. So
What's EMS? Emergency Medical Services. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Are you still working on that? In that on that path, or what are you thinking about now?
So after this year, I want to finish school and become a midwife. I want to deliver
Cool.
babies, maybe one day open up my own birthing center. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
That's like, yeah, that's amazing. That's childbirth is a whole crazy thing. I mean, it,
I've
I don't know.
always been super interested in it, and I think when I was writing down my experiences about the different deaths, one of the questions was, well, why have I had to experience so much death? This is just in one of my little manic moments where I'm just writing to myself and the universe kind of thing.
Mm,
And the answer that I received was, well, you wish to just be this force to be reckoned with in the birthing world. Like you wish to know everything about it and understand it. And one of the ways that you're going to be able to appreciate life coming into this world is to have experienced all this death.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't know where that answer came from, but
mm,
it it's been sticking with me for a
yeah.
little bit.
That's yeah. Thresholds. You
Mm,
coming in and going out. That's amazing. So interesting that
mhm.
you're so like drawn to that. All right, yeah, well, let's, I'll go, yeah, wait, yeah, we did that, we did that? Yes.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
the last gorgeous thing you saw?
The last gorgeous thing I saw. Um, I'm gonna say a sunset. Yeah, I
All right.
think here in the Netherlands, everything is like so flat, and there's no tall buildings getting in the way of anything, and there's just the place I live in. It's like a village, and there's just farmland everywhere. And
Ugh,
I was cooking dinner or something the other day and looked out the window and just saw the most beautiful sunset. It was gorgeous.
that is cool, 'cause that's like you talked about those sunrises earlier, and, like,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
it's nice to
Well,
be able to see
can I
that
ask,
and
like,
feel that.
how why the Netherlands? How'd you end up at the Netherlands?
Well, so I was initially going to do Denmark because I
Uh-huh.
read something or I was listening to a podcast about how they were the happiest place on earth.
Oh,
Um
wow.
yeah, yeah, so I was like I could use some happy. I'm going to do that one. Um but then I had a friend who was also trying to move to Europe around the same time as me, and she was thinking of the Netherlands, and yeah, at that point I just wanted to move. So,
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, why not? Sure, let's do this."
I mean, that's just so amazing to me. Like, that's the most proactive response to, like, I'm having depression, is like, well, where's the happiest place on earth? And then literally
Yeah,
go
I'm gonna
there.
go there. Yeah, that was
Going to Disneyland, you know?
right. I
That
think
rules.
back on it and it's
Has it been
just
happy? I mean, I know you ended up in Netherlands, that time, but like, how does it feel being there?
it feels good. It feels really good to be here. I feel really proud of myself for doing this. I had, never been on a plane before or anything of that nature. I hopped on a plane and I said I wanted to do something and I did it. So being
Hmm.
here, being around the laid back atmosphere of some of the people here um, has helped. And I think it's just a different world. It's a different world. It's completely different than anything I've ever known. And I feel like it's just the shake I needed to get back into living and not just surviving.
Is it good? Is it a different world in a good way or bad or both?
Both, both.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good in the sense of I'm having to learn new things, and there's a language barrier, so learning Dutch is ridiculous. It is insane. But yeah, and but it's good because I've had to learn a train system, and it's a simple thing,
Yeah.
but I can hop on a train and go somewhere now, and it's something I learned to do. And it's just
Right.
one of those wins for the day that I like to keep with me.
Yeah, like
Um,
you literally that's a very metaphorical one though too. You've like learned how to navigate. You've learned how to like go out into the world, on your own
right,
yeah, under your own terms or whatever. Yeah.
which has been the reason for this trip, pretty much to learn how to do things by myself again, or in the first
Yeah.
place, you know.
Yeah. I'm just curious, do you experience I don't know, maybe it never even comes up, but are the attitudes there around like mental health and things different at all? Do you notice or what's that like at all?
I don't know if I can speak too much on that, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone that I have spoken to about my journey and about why I'm here has been super receptive um, about it, and just it immediately makes sense to them. And I don't know if
Yeah.
that means that they're more forward thinking on mental health, or if it's just I'm just happen to meet people in that circle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm honestly not too sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I was just curious if
Yeah.
anything. Well, let's do don't kill yourself list. What
Yeah.
do you want to add there? As you know, I always start with coffee sandwiches and lavender soap, but
Hmm.
give me some stuff.
Let's see. I'm gonna add being barefoot, because I think walking
Oh,
around barefoot is just awesome.
yeah. That is a good
Um,
one.
let's
You
see.
go like outside? You go to the park or something like that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Feeling some warm grass or warm sand, or yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Even just as a kid, like running outside with no shoes on during the winter in the snow, just cause
Wow,
kids
yeah,
do dumb
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like quite literally feeling your attachment to the earth. It's such
Yeah,
a
for sure.
refreshing.
There have
Well, that's
been
good.
plenty of studies about that being really healthy for you
Really?
to. Yeah, they call it earthing.
Earthing.
Earthing. Yeah.
Wow. I've never heard that.
Mhm.
Oh my God, I'm
It's
gonna look that up. Wait, do you know more
yeah,
about
there's
that? I've never heard of that.
I mean, I know the concept is just be
Yeah.
outside barefoot and connect to the earth. It's a
Uh-huh.
super hippy dippy kind of
No, I
just
love it.
idea. Yeah,
Earthing. It's just good to have a name
earthing.
for it. I'm gonna look that up. And now
For
you can literally
sure.
go to the like Earth Canal because you go to the canal. It's an Earth around the
Right.
canal. Oh, I fucked up this whole thing with a horrible pun right at the end. Like such a nice conversation that I was like, you can be an earthing
Puns are always
practitioner,
worth it.
an earth facilitator.
Yes. Yes.
Man, that's amazing. Well, I don't know. Thank you. This has been really nice. I feel like. Thank you for joining me and for being so open and sharing this. I think it's like so valuable. Do you have anything? I don't know. Do you have anything you want to like for sure say or that Yeah, I don't know.
Um,
I just want to hand it over to you. I might have missed something, or what do you feel like?
let's see. I think the only thing I would want to say is that the whole or let me start over. Living in a world where you have lost a parent is really, really hard. So I think all I want to say is to anyone who who is in that situation and is listening to this, that I see you and I hear you, and it's it's going to be okay, you know? You're going to figure out how to live this new life without them, and it's never going to be easy, but it's going to become manageable. Um yeah, that's all.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
This has been great. I'm so excited that you replied back, and this is cool.
I'm j- I think this is just great. I don't know. Yeah, I'm gonna post this very soon, but I'm this bodes well for this whole experiment. talking to
Nice.
talking to y'all. Thank you, because I mean, I've this ephemeral concept of this good bad brain community of our good bad brains,
Yeah.
but it's nice to have it be like really real for a minute, you know?
And I appreciate you and I applaud you for like making that connection, that like human connection, because it's so important. It's like, hey, we're all here. We're all doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I this is just the first one. I'm hopeful that this is a experiment that's successful because the pod's been on for like almost a year now, and it goes through incarnate. I'm different all the time, and trying to figure out what this thing wants it to be. Like first, it was just kind of like or just talky, interviewee, but like with
Yeah.
some mental health thrown in. I don't know. And then I was like, should it be more booky and do study? I was like, I think there's other things that do that better. I'm not a professional, and
Mm,
the thing that whenever I feel like not doing it anymore, or like what's the point that keeps it going is because people will send a message here or there, like, where you're like, damn, okay, so there was one person that made a difference to, and it just seems to me that thing, that these connections that we share and these shared experiences and being able to learn from each other or just find somebody else that we like resonate with them because they also are struggling and overcoming things.
mm-hmm. So
I think
important.
that's I think that's the thing. That's it. I think
That's it.
that's it. And if we get and I if this good bad brain thing, if my good bad brain, hopefully people read that and will read it in first person so they know it's about their good bad brains. Obviously it comes
Right.
through my lens because that's the only one I got, but this has been
Right.
wonderful to have you come, and I'm hoping I'll get better and better at it, but it's like I will add in and I'll ask questions, but when this is about your good bad brain, I don't know, and that just
Right.
really excites me to like thank you. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for taking the reins today. That's great. This is great.
Thank you for having me. Truly, truly.
All right. Thank you guys for being here for this 50th fucking episode. Thank you, Lyndsay Cromwell, for doing this. Thank you, Coda, for helping me make this theme song. If you get something out of the pod, check out patreon.com/mygoodbadbrain. Throw a couple bucks at it. Or just leave us a nice review. Those 5-star reviews help the pod out a lot. Helps it grow. Thanks a lot. Tell your friends. And write me, mygoodbadbrain@gmail.com if you want to be considered. Thank you. Okay, bye.